Welcome to Salcedo Paranormal. It is Wednesday, April 20th, 2022, and today is a weekly book review stream where I will be continuing the review of H.P. Lovecraft, The Complete Fiction. A couple of stories I'm going to talk about today. And of course, I'll say this again later on, but there will be spoilers. So, of course, these are older stories, so hopefully that's okay. As always, you can find all the episodes and links to social media, ways to donate, and other ways to contact me on the podcast page, which is salcidoparanormal.podbean.com. That's SALSIDO paranormal.podbean.com. Always happy to hear from you all, whether you have comments or questions or topic suggestions for the show, or if you have stories of experiences with the paranormal, whether they're your own or from others you trust. I can either read those on the show, or if you want to join me on the show and talk about those experiences, we can do that as well. Thank you all for listening today, whether you're here in the live stream or listening to the podcast or YouTube feeds. It's always appreciated. So I think it covers everything for now. So I'll get to these stories here. I've got two I'm going to review today because they're basically short novels. So I figure two should be hopefully enough for a good 20-30 minutes of talking about this. And this is again from the H.P. Lovecraft, The Complete Fiction. And so I've been going through this, the audiobook in my case, going through this audiobook and listening to a good 2 to 3 to 4 stories at a time and reviewing them as I go. And I just looked today and I'm about almost getting close to halfway done with that audiobook. That's how big it is. Like I said, I have like, let me see, 32 hours left to listen to out of the 48. So I'm like a third of the way done. So I'm getting there slowly, which is just amazing to me that there's so much there to so much material there to go over. So this is just another part in this long series of these review shows of this book. Also, another brief note, I am going to after this, or maybe even before that, I might start working them in sooner. I've always enjoyed some of Edgar Allan Poe's short stories, so I may start getting some of those in here at different times as well, just so that I'm not just reviewing Stephen King, which I love a lot of his books, but I know obviously everyone is different, so when I can, I will definitely try to put in some different authors. So yeah, again, there will be spoilers, and I think that that covers it. So let's see here. The first story I'm going to review is The Shadow Out of Time. Again, it's a novella, which is a short novel. And this one and the next story are both from this Complete Fiction of Lovecraft. And so this story basically talks about this alien species that has an ability to travel through time, and space and time. And they accomplish this by switching bodies with hosts from uh, different places and times. And this happens to the narrator, where he basically has missing time, except he didn't disappear physically, but he did lose a chunk of time where the people around him didn't recognize him. He wasn't himself. And this narrator is, his name is Nathaniel Wingate uh, Peasley, who is from the U.S. He lives in the first decade of the 20th century. Who is possessed by one of these creatures? I believe it's a Yithian. Uh, is the name of the Yith is the name of the species. So basically, he doesn't have memory of this period of time, but he starts to be afraid he's losing his mind when he um, starts seeing strange visions of other worlds and of this library, this Yithian library city. It's basically like a city-sized library. He also feels like he's being led by these creatures and is shown how they live. But he doesn't remember all this at first. These memories come back to him over time. And meanwhile, once he gets back to his body, he finds that everyone around him have decided that he must have gone insane due to the actions of the alien, the Yithian, that took control of his body. And so, apparently, these Yithians, they existed in Earth's ancient past, which is where a lot of these the creatures, the beings in Lovecraft stories, they are from, or they landed basically on Earth in the ancient past, sort of a fictional version of the ancient astronaut theory in a way. Uh, so, but anyway, let's see here. Let me just make sure I find my spot here. So, I lost my spot. Okay. So anyway, like I said, the people in his life that are around him, think he is insane when really he's just been switched out of his body. His mind has been switched out of his body, and he's been taken over by this creature. So, and again, this left his mind, his thoughts, in the ancient past for a while there. Then he comes back and finds out about his strange actions, and and so of course everyone thinks he just had a mental breakdown. And he starts looking into all basically this kind of a thing, the things that happened to him, and he finds other cases throughout history where people appear to also have gone through the same thing he did. And so he starts to think that these aliens, these creatures, have been doing this to people throughout the history of Earth, but also other worlds. So it's really terrifying, but it's an amazing idea. It's almost like this ancient race of, almost, I guess you could say, like researchers or just beings looking into different times throughout basically the rest of time in different worlds and cataloging what they're like. And so he discovers that these creatures on Earth died out eons ago. Their civilizations were destroyed by uh, another alien race, uh, pre-human. Again, these are all pre-human races, described as uh, half polypus creatures. Um, but basically, because these creatures are able to, the Ethians are able to switch minds with people and with other beings in the future. It's almost like they're still there for the people that have this happen to them anyway. Um, and so he at first he hopes that all of everything they experienced was just what everyone thought it was, which is insanity. But then he finds proof of this library, this city, um, and that there are still remnants of this city uh, on Earth, and there are also still creatures, survivors of the race that destroyed them. And let's see here. So I believe that basically covers the. Let's see. Does that cover? Yeah, that covers the premise of the story. Um, but just this idea of this race of creatures that could project through time into other life forms, and then take notes and catalog these other worlds and other species. And even I believe in the story it um, mentions that they didn't just travel through the universe that the main character that Wingate is in. They somehow had access to other universes as well. And so really this was a I'm just summarizing this the story is just so well written. I would definitely recommend it, and like I said, it goes into a lot more detail and a lot more eloquent wording that I'm able to put together here. So, but it suggests it talks about that the possibility of really, in a way, a few different things, a sort of possession in a way of other entities taking over, basically. Um, in this case, in this story, that a human, but apparently this has been done to other species as well. And again, it's a time travel story in a way. It's also a multi-universe story in a way as well. Um, where even though in the time in the at the point of time of the story for the narrator for Wingate, for Peasley, I think is actually his last name. Wingate is just the one that keeps sticking in my head. Um, for in his time, these things have already died off, at least on Earth anyway. But because they were able to do this kind of time travel thing, um, they pretty much have existed in one form or another throughout time. So that's basically that story. Like I said, I highly recommend. Excuse me, checking out the any Lovecraft you can find. Uh, there's some really amazing paranormal and science fiction kind of ideas in a lot of his stories. Um, and so I'm really enjoying, other than a few minor, not even really minor, a few things that obviously these stories are written over over I think over a century ago now. So there is some problematic, problematic points of view from the author, but if you can kind of just ignore those and just keep reading on, um, there are some amazing subjects in his fiction. So I think that's a good place to stop for that story. And I'll go on to the next one here, which is it's called "At the Mountains of Madness." Um, Let me get some water real quick here, and I'll be right back. At the Mountains of Madness. This story I listened to just today, actually. The other one I listened to last week. Um, Sometimes these stories, they can take a few hours to listen to. So, um, but this one is it's basically inspired by Lovecraft's interest in the Antarctic Circle. Um, the area was still not fully explored in the 1930s. And actually, the part I found this really amazing because I hadn't read the story before, but I've been thinking of getting back to Edgar Allan Poe, and apparently there's some reference to one of his novels, the narrative of Arthur Gordon Pym of uh, of Nantucket is the name of that story. Um, but it's mentioned that story is mentioned in this story. So anyway, this story is narrated, and all these stories usually so far anyway they've been narrated by one person for most of the story. And the narrator in this story is a geologist by the name of William Dyer, who was a professor at um, the Arkham, which is a city in the story, at this town's university, which is featured in his other Lovecraft's other stories. This Muscatonic University, and the reason that William is narrating the story is he's afraid of future explorations of the Antarctic because of what he and others went through. And that's basically the story here. So, Dyer went on this expedition with several others. And he basically led a group of scholars from that university, Muscatonic University, on a previous expedition to that area where they discovered ancient ruins and a dangerous secret beyond mountains that were apparently higher than the Himalayas. So, this group has split up in a few different smaller groups at the start of the story for various reasons, cover more ground, explore more areas. But they all have radios, early forms of radios. And there's a small advanced group that's led by another professor, Professor Lake, that discover the remains of 14 prehistoric life forms that are previously unknown to science. And also, all these scholars can't tell if these creatures are plants or animals. 6 of these bodies have been badly damaged, while another 8 have been preserved in perfect condition. And so, but they're found in so deep in the ground that they have to be from, basically, again, as in with a lot of these stories, very close to pre-human times. But then at one point, after Lake reports all of this, his there are no more reports via radio from this group, and that's when Dyer and others go out over there to where the lake had been at to investigate and to find out what went wrong, what was going on. So they get there to Lake's camp, which is devastated, with most of the men and dogs slaughtered, while a man named Gedney and one of the dogs are missing. And near the campsite, they find 6 star-shaped snow mounds with one creature under each one. And I believe these are the 6 that right, I may not be the same ones, but anyway, there's 6 of these things that are buried in the ground. Excuse me. And they also find that the better preserved life forms have disappeared, and that some form of dissection has been done on both an unnamed man and a dog. So really strange things happening at this site. So sorry about that. My nose is bothering me tonight. All poked up. But anyway, so they find all these things which are really disturbing. And they figure that the Gedney, they think that Gedney must have gone insane. And they figure that he must have been the one to do all this damage to all the creatures and the other men and the dogs. So Dyer, Dyer and another student named Danforth fly a plane across the mountains, which they identify as the outer walls of a vast stone city that's been abandoned, and its architecture is not known to any of them. But there's these creatures that are seen in the that have been found in the ground, and some of the architecture reminds Dyer of myths and legends of creatures mentioned in another fictional book that's mentioned throughout Lovecraft stories, the Necronomicon. And the builders of this lost civilization are called the Elder Things. And so Dyer and Danforth explore this city, and they find hieroglyphics and murals, and they basically find a history of these Elder Things that came to Earth shortly after the moon took form and built their cities with the help of other creatures that I believe I've heard this name before in other stories, known as Shoggoths, Shoggoths. Biological creatures made to perform various tasks and take any shape and reflect any thought. And there's it's hinted through these murals and hieroglyphics that all life on Earth evolved from cellular. There we go. I can say that word. material that was left over from the creation of these things. So um, basically, that life on Earth developed from these things that these aliens brought. So the pair go through more of these buildings, and they find out about conflicts between these elder things and um, the another race of creatures known as the Star Spawn of Cthulhu, and another race called the Migo, Mi-Go, who arrived on Earth shortly after. And so these different races arrived on Earth and had a problem with each other. And once the Shoggoth also not long after that start to act independently, and as more resources are devoted to maintaining order, the etchings, the designs on the wall, become more rough and primitive, and more of the murals also mention or hint at this unnamed evil that is lurking within the larger mountain range located beyond the city. And according to these murals, this mountain range rose in one night, and other events deterred the elder things from exploring it. And eventually, this part of the world, through all the decrease of temperatures and increase of snow and ice, eventually became uninhabitable even for the elder things. So they eventually left the area and went underwater into a large large subterranean ocean. And so Danforth, Dyer and Danforth eventually figure out that the elder things missing from the advance party's camp had somehow come back to life, and after killing the explorers, returned to their city. And they find traces of the elder things' earlier exploration, as well as sleds containing the bodies of the missing man and dog, Gendy and the dog. So they get deeper into the city. They find these different, what's really kind of, I don't know, funny in a way is throughout the story there are penguins throughout the entire area. So there's all these penguins living in the remains of the city. But here they find, in this tunnel that's leading further underground, they find evidence of different elder things killed in a struggle. And they find more penguins that they suspect were used as livestock way back when. So, but then they find this this creature that is basically formless. It's described as in this description as a black bubbling, almost like a black goo, massive black goo in a way. That is apparently one of these Shoggoth things, and eventually chases after them, and they flee the area. And while they're in the plane, Danforth looks back and sees something that causes him to go insane. And it's when he's looking at these mountains of madness behind the ruined city. So, and the story after that is, of course, they get out of there. But Dyer figures out that the Elder Things are survivors of a different era who slaughtered Lake's group only in self-defense and or scientific curiosity. And that their civilization was eventually destroyed by those Shoggoths, which now basically use the penguins, these, in some cases, mutant, large penguins, as a food source. And so this is why he warns the planners of the next proposed expedition to stay away from that site. And that's basically where that story ends. So, again, really well done story. Better written than I can describe there. But I really enjoy both of these stories. And I definitely recommend this to anyone. Oh, look at that. Look who shows up right near the end. Derek, the Night Stalker. Yeah, you showed up for Lovecraft. But you'll get to listen to the podcast version. But I think, if I'm not mistaken, I've heard that you've read these stories before, or at least you're familiar with them. So, but yeah, so that's basically it for this episode. Again, this will be out. Just I'm reading the chat here. Derek, this will be out tomorrow afternoon at the latest. It might be out in the morning, it might not. We'll see what happens. Tomorrow afternoon at the latest, it'll be out. So tomorrow is more true paranormal stories from the web. And, oh, that's true. Derek is somewhat nocturnal, as I am. I forget that. But yeah, so tomorrow is more true paranormal stories from the web. Also, I'm happy to announce that this Friday, we'll be starting a new little mini-series of episodes all about the history of fairs and festivals and carnivals leading up to amusement parks, and how the paranormal ties into all these things, including modern day sightings of and experiences of the paranormal in these places. So I'm pretty sure it'll be at least 2 parts. It'll be at least this Friday and next Friday. Although I'm thinking it'll probably be a 3-week, a 3-episode thing, just because there's so much to get into. So that will start this Friday. So looking forward to that. Already been doing the research for that. So I think that takes care of everything. Thank you all for listening. And I'll talk to you all tomorrow night on the next episode of Salcedo Paranormal. Take care.